Okay, I think we would start. So hello everybody. I'm happy to open this important webinar on business opportunities in digital development and AgTech with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. I'm also very happy to see many participants here with us today. My name is Eyal Medan, and I am the Director of Multilateral Development Banks Division in the Ministry of Finance. As you might know, Israel is a member of 4 MDBs, Multilateral Development Banks, which include the World Bank Group, the Inter-American Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, and the Ebrd. I'm responsible for Israeli strategy regarding the banks, and my primary goal is to promote Israeli technologies and innovation in order to support the developing countries and to boost Israeli trade. This webinar is one of a series of events that we plan to arrange during the next year in order to enhance the familiarity of Israeli companies with the MDBs and opportunities that exist for both sides. The Ebrd is a significant player among the 39 recipient countries in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Mediterranean. For reference, in 2019, the Ebrd invested a record of over 10 billion euros in more than 450 projects. It is important to note that there are several Israeli employees that are currently working at the Ebrd, and they can help and assist when needed. One of them, Niv Levy, who is working in the Procurement division, is here with us today. Also here with us today is Israel's recently appointed alternate director at the board of directors, Alon Messer, who will begin its role next month and will represent Israel His email address will be attached at the chat for you to connect. I would like to thank the Ebrd senior management who are here with us today to share with us ways that Israeli companies can engage with the bank. I would also like to thank the Foreign Trade Administration and SEED Israel for organizing the event. And lastly, Anna and Beverly from the Business Development Division at the Ebrd who initiated this event. I wish us all a fruitful webinar. Thank you. And I invite Alon to open.
Thanks a lot, Eyal. My name is Alon, and I'm the Director General of SEED Israel. And for those of you who don't know us, we are an umbrella organization with more than 150 members who are coming from the private sector, the governmental, the civil society, and the academia. When our goal is to promote the Israeli involvement in emerging markets. Always it is a great pleasure cooperating with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Trade and Economy and Trade. And in this opportunity to thanks a lot Eyal, Bareket, and Noah for our ongoing cooperation. I will just briefly say that when we are putting together those events and we are presenting opportunities to the Israeli ecosystem, companies, advisors, organizations, we always need to remember that our ultimate test will be when, after presenting the opportunities, additional Israeli firms and advisors will find the way to cooperate in the frameworks of the EBRD operations. And at the end of the day, this is what we need to promote and change, to bring more and more Israelis to take part in those activities with the EBRD and with other development banks. So it will be great following such a session to get feedbacks from the participants, from the companies, from the advisors in regard missing information, or if not, always good to know that information was not missed, but basically to get some feedbacks from you, because together with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Trade, we would like that those gatherings and meetings and webinars will lead at the end to practical operations on the ground. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask Bareket to join us. Bareket?
Thank you very much, Alon. Good afternoon. It is a real pleasure participating in such an intriguing discussion, tackling challenges and opportunities in emerging markets and developing fields across 3 continents and in almost 40 economies. I'm very honored to open the session on behalf of the Foreign Trade Administration at the Ministry of Economy and Industry of Israel. Evidently, we see great importance in enhancing, diversifying, and enriching the Israeli collaborations with international financial institutions in diverse geographical areas. In this regard, the plethora of projects, accumulated knowledge, and expertise presented by the EBRD place it undeniably as a great partner to whoever is interested in change and growth, goals that are of great necessity and in declining supply in momentous times such as ours. As the head of the Israeli Economic and Trade Mission to Romania and Ukraine, I have witnessed the impact of large-scale EBRD projects on the development of capital markets, sustainable infrastructure, energy efficiency and security, agricultural industrial productivity in Eastern Europe. Specifically in Romania and Ukraine, we're talking about almost 1,000 projects with the cumulative EBRD investment of almost 24 billion euros to date. Those projects could use Israeli innovative technologies and know-how. And this is exactly what we are all here for to do today, to learn more about business opportunities in the digital development and the agtech sectors. Last but not least, I would like to take the opportunity and strongly encourage Israeli companies interested in learning more about their economic and commercial possibilities, whether it's in Romania, in Ukraine, or elsewhere, to approach us. We have almost 50 economic missions around the globe and an unparalleled track record of Israeli success stories in those respective markets. We would like each and every one of you to be our next success story. Thank you very much, Seed Israel. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing the fruitful discussion. Toda rabba.
Thank you all for your warm welcome, and a special thanks to Eyal and Maria from SEED, who work hand in hand with us in delivering this event, which we hope will actually be very practical and very focused on results and helping many Israeli companies work with us. My name is Anna Drašković. I'm Business Development Director in EBRD, and I will share with you an overview of what is EBRD and how do we operate, what are the products that we have. But before I do so, I would like to introduce my colleagues who are joining me here today and to thank them for the presentations you will see shortly. So we have here Dirk Werner, who is our director in ICT, who will be discussing and sharing with you what are the opportunities in ICT sector for Israeli companies. After him, we will hear from Jelena Erker, who is a senior banker in our agribusiness team, who will share and open opportunities in agribusiness. We also have with us Anna Brod, who will share our capacities in TFP, which is actually one of the key instruments in the current crisis. And it is something that we believe is going to be quite beneficial for Israeli companies. Then we would also like to introduce to you Anna Zharova, who is actually based in Tel Aviv. She doesn't work at Ebrd, but she was actually working with us. So she will share her experience in working with us and how does it actually work and why is it good getting in touch and how can we help. And then last but not the least, we have our colleagues from Procurement, Niv Levy, who is Israeli national working at Ebrd, one of several that we have. And he will be joined by our colleague Jan Jackholt, who will actually be here to share all the procurement details on the opportunities that you would like to encounter. So I will start by sharing my presentation with you, which is on who is actually Ebrd, what we are all about. So we are a AAA rated institution, and actually this has recently been confirmed despite of the crisis. Our membership basis is growing, at the moment 69, but soon to be actually above 70 with strong capital base. And you can see here some key dates and shareholding structure. What is more important is actually for me to show you this map, which illustrates which are the countries where we operate, where in each of these we also have physical presence, at least one, sometimes more offices. So you can see that we cover North of Africa, Central and Eastern Europe, Central Asia, so plenty of countries. So if you're interested in any of those, do get in touch. Here we have some information on our mandate. And our mandate, this is something that I would like to stress, is actually we are focusing on private sector. So unlike some other IFIs, which are mainly focused on sovereign, we look into developing private sector opportunities. And I think this is why it might be good getting in touch with us. And on my right-hand side of this slide, you can also see some top destinations when it comes to our investment. This year is a bit special one. We normally don't have, for example, Georgia in top 5 investment destination, but because of strong TFP programs and because of our strong corona response, this country emerged, some others as well, but usually Turkey, Egypt are topping this list together with Ukraine. This is, I think, quite important slide for me to share, and actually I will leave the presentation with Sid so you can all have it in the end. This is an overview of our product, of the typical sizes that we can do in debt, equity or guarantees, and then all the details in respect to terms and currencies. It is important to mention that we can offer local currency financing in most of our countries, and that our terms are usually longer than those provided by commercial banks. Some of our projects actually often have a strong donor component as well. So once you get in touch with us, we will be happy to explain in more detail anything that you may be interested in. What I would like to share with you now is just a brief overview of our joint cooperation with Israel. So Israel, as Eyal mentioned, is a founding member of the Ebrd, very important contributor to our work. I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but you can see that we had plenty of joint investments across a number of countries in different sectors, but also in trade facilitation programs. So there is a good track record of Ebrd supporting Israeli companies progress and actually develop your activities across range of countries. We also offer consultancy contracts, and this is something that is going to be discussed later on through our procurement session. Last but not the least, Israel is also a donor to Ebrd, supporting several of our projects with a special focus on climate and environment. This is my final slide with my details and also details of my colleague Beverly, who was working very hard to make this event happen. So you can get in touch with us for any information you may be needed going forward. And I'm now handing over to my colleague Dirk to take us to the ICT world of Ebrd.
Thank you very much, Anna. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dirk Werner. So I am responsible for our information and communication technologies business. Let me just upload this slide. So I hope you can all see it. We are a fairly small and specialized team. We're all based in London. We don't really have a practical subsector division or a geographic division. We cover essentially all of our countries out of London. But if you think about the main pillars of our business, it is number one, infrastructure-based business models. So fixed or mobile networks, data centers, towers. So basically asset-heavy companies that we can lend against and that really make up the bulk of our investments that are also important to provide the digital infrastructure in our countries upon which application software and other companies can actually exist. We have a focus on new technologies, which is more the digital platforms, e-commerce businesses, fintech, clean tech, AI, big data. These are sort of smaller asset-light companies, but I suspect that is probably the focus that a lot of you will find interesting. We break out IT services separately. IT services, business process outsourcing, cloud computing is sometimes not that easy for us to deal with. We are primarily a debt provider to the markets, although I will say a word about our equity capabilities as well, because even here on our meeting with you, I presume that equity is perhaps the more interesting product. And largely one of the key areas of the EBRD's mandate is to help companies in pre-privatizations or privatizations, because as Anna said in the original slides, we are very much private sector focused and therefore like to make the private sector more competitive, enhance competition. And there are sometimes, incumbent and government-owned enterprises that are ready for privatization, and we would help with that. Broadly speaking, we have debt and equity as our key funding products. Debt is really mostly the case for infrastructure and asset-heavy companies, as you can imagine, because of the security provided. Equity, we do more and more. It is maybe not as well known as a remit of the EBRD. We are minority investors. We co-invest preferably alongside private equity firms rather than strategic investors. Similarly to private equity firms, we have an exit horizon, so we need to understand for how long we will be a partner. But it lends itself to certain segments more than others. For example, if you look at the new technologies, one of our most successful practice in that area is actually our venture capital practice. Venture capital is embedded in the ICT team. It is a group of bankers that essentially take positions in early stage and growth companies. And I can say a little bit more about this on the next slide. But this is one of the areas that we see growing, not so much in volume. We are typically taking 1 to 10 million euros tickets in one investment. But there is a surprising breadth of companies in our countries of operations where we find interesting opportunities, specifically because larger Western venture capital firms, as you can imagine, focus on the US and the larger Western markets, and therefore size is sometimes not critical. We also provide SME credit lines. We engage in public to private structures. We have third-party guarantee programs, but also, and this is the last comment maybe on the slide, which you see under additional support, we have a very established and large technical assistance program, which comprises policy dialogue. Policy dialogue in this case means working with the regulators in our countries, help create an equal playing field, which is particularly important for new entrants in markets. Advisory in the privatization, for example, for state-run companies. Technical cooperation as well, where we help companies prepare for sales, prepare for fundraising, in the prepare them through technical due diligence, preparation of the governance structures and so forth. And procurement, on which you will hear my colleague Jack a little bit later towards the later part of this presentation. So this is essentially the whole product suite we have. I'm showing on this slide more a characterization of what we in the VCA in the ICT team do. You have at the bottom our 3 core products: debt funding, where there is basically no size limitation. I think in our sector, probably 100 to 150 million euros of a debt participation is a large ticket. We do smaller tickets as well, but this is where we essentially have no size constraints. We have equity as our second product. No size constraints in theory, although this is probably more a 20 to 50 million euro ticket product. And then we have venture capital. VCIP stands for Venture Capital Investment Platform. And if you go to the vertical axis, blue is the more infrastructure heavy companies that we look at. And as you imagine, most of those companies lend themselves for debt products, a few equity as well. And on the upper left, you see the new technology, so the asset light, innovative technological companies, where we have very little debt exposure, obviously, more equity, but this is where our venture capital practice is really concentrated. So these are early stage, high growth companies that we support. They are typically founder-led businesses. So on the venture capital side, we don't co-invest with strategics. It is founder-led. We don't do seed state or pre-seed. So it needs to be an early stage company that has already revenues, that has a proven business model, if you will, but it doesn't need to be profitable. We invest together with other venture capitalists. So we are rarely, or I would actually say never, the sole investor. This applies to our equity engagements as well. We are together with market players. They validate the investment thesis for us. But this is where we actually see a lot of demand, and also especially under the current COVID crisis situations, many companies are seeking more, equity or convertible or mezzanine or some kind of structured instruments rather than plain debt. So this part here is probably, I suspect, where a number of you are maybe more interested in than in this part, but the bulk of what we do is still debt. But I would encourage you to reach out to us because we're very interested in finding opportunities where we can support with equity. This is the team. I said it's a fairly small and concentrated team in terms of the Ebrd. We're all one team, although the venture capital team, I've separated them out. These are 5 dedicated professionals under the leadership of Bakram Ibrahimov, who heads the VCIP practice. And these are the people that really matter. Now, going forward, I've now decided I will not show the faces anymore because everybody looks better than me on this slide. So therefore, take a look at it now. It will not appear anytime soon. But for requests, for contacts, for further information, these are the 3 of us maybe that you should contact in the first instance. And I think with that, we can have a Q&A later, but that is, I think, all that I wanted to present at this stage. Thank you very much. And I think it is now time for me to hand it over to my colleague Jelena Erka, who is a senior banker in our Agri team, agricultural team. And please go ahead, Jelena.
Thank you so much, Dirk. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jelena Erka, and I'm Associate Director in the Agribusiness team. Let me just briefly introduce the team before we actually dive into opportunities. So I will just share my screen. So starting from who we are the single largest private investor in our sector in most of Ebrd countries that we operate in. Since the inception of the Ebrd, we invested approximately 12 billion, and currently our portfolio stands at around 3 billion. We invest annually at something around 800 million over 50 or 60 projects. And what we define as agri is anything between agri inputs farming through processing to food retail. Recently, we have started covering or kind of stepping away from only traditional what we usually call agri, and looking also into more innovative models, including agtech and as well as organic and green. So currently we are working with most of global multinationals, and at the same time, we are also supporting local champions and SMEs in our countries of operations. If we look at how we can support companies, in essence, we provide, just like Dirk said before, similarly, we also do both debt and equity and anything in between. We can do acquisition financing. And as an example, I can say that, for instance, last year, we supported the joint venture between PepsiCo and Matoni in supporting them to acquire a Serbian company, Knjaz Miloš. Similarly, in the past, we provided a loan to support, for instance, Israeli Frutarom when they were expanding into our region. What distinguishes us from other financial institutions is that we can provide financing across the capital structure, and we can always do so very flexibly and tailor-made depending on what actually project needs are. Finally, we can also mobilize donor funding, and we regularly engage with governments on policy dialogue. For instance, we have engaged over the past years with Greece on reduction of plastics, as well as, for instance, with Moroccan government on improving olive oil traceability. One of very important themes that we are currently looking at is green. Obviously, this has been a theme for us for a while. Currently, Ebrd actually is working on increasing its own target from 40 to 50% of total investments. To date, Ebrd has invested approximately 34 billion in green investments and financed over 1,900 green projects. What we are hoping, and we are actually currently working on, is actually some new products which we will be able to offer to our potential clients, including Israeli clients, that are looking to expand in our region, such as sustainability-linked loans. Also, other than just providing financing for green investments, we are increasingly looking in addressing some other important themes, such as climate corporate governance. For instance, last year, starts working with one of our clients, Olam, on agribusiness commodity trader on this particular topic. If I just quickly walk you through our key kind of regions, I will start with Southeastern Mediterranean region, which is quite diverse, but clearly one of the largest countries that we are working in there is Egypt, which is a main grain importer, but also very important exporter of fruit and vegetables. On the other hand, we have Morocco and Tunisia, which are very significant exporters of olive oil. Given that the region has a large population and a substantial growth prospects, we see the food sector will continue growing, and there is a lot of potential for investment. The next very important country for us that has been already mentioned is Ukraine, which is one of the biggest countries, actually one of the biggest grain exporters, which has substantial infrastructure, and as well as it holds 1/3 of the European black soil. For us, this is a very important country in which we have a very large portfolio, and we invest approximately 150 million and more every year. The next country, which is very important for us, is Turkey, which is, as you know, fast-growing economy, which not only has a strong food industry, but we also see it as an important hub for a number of regional players due to its unique position between Asia and Europe. We similarly view Western Balkans, which is very close to EU, and again, can play a role of the hub for companies. It has favorable climate to number of agri-inputs and access to non-GMO inputs. And finally, maybe just as an example of our cooperation as a team with Israeli companies. Okay, clearly we have done a number of projects that were supported by Israeli sponsors, but most recent one was in 2016 when we supported Frutarom, that is now part of American IFF, in their expansion into our region. We provided a 50 million loan, which was supported their acquisitions in Poland and Slovenia. And what was really important for us is that not only we supported very niche and new sector for us, flavors and fragrances, but also that that the project enable knowledge sharing and transfer of very sophisticated R&D. Finally, last year, together with the government of Serbia, Ebrd designed the project to support irrigation system in Serbia, which was structured in 2 phases, each 50 million in size, in order to support different regions in Serbia which are in a need of a better irrigation infrastructure. As part of this project, TC funds were structured and in part provided by Israeli Ministry of Economy and Israeli Ministry of Environment. And finally, please reach out. These are my contact details. And thank you for the opportunity to present the agribusiness team. I will now hand over to my colleague Anna from TFP team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anna Brod. I'm a principal banker from the Ebrds Trade Facilitation Program. And let me share with you the presentation and give you an overview of what the Trade Facilitation Program does and how we can support trade with Israel. So the Trade Facilitation Program, the TFP, has been running since 1999. It's one of Ebrd's flagship programs, and we aim to support foreign trade to, from, and among Ebrd regions in the following ways. We help local banks to create a track record with foreign commercial banks by offering them trade finance limits. Through which we can then take on 100% of the political and commercial risk of any trade finance instrument that those banks in our regions issue in favor of foreign correspondent banks. We also can provide liquidity to some of our partner banks for trade finance transactions that they lend then to the importers or exporters. And we also invest a lot in the building capacity of our local banks through advisory services, technical assistance of e-learning programs, different seminars, etc., and thereby strengthening the trade finance knowledge in all of our countries. Just to explain how the TFP guarantees work, the mechanism, and this is kind of the, let's say, bread and butter of our program. This is the product that we use on a daily basis. We issue about 10 transactions per day. So in theory, it's very simple. Here's the mechanism. So if we start at the bottom, there's a trade relationship between an importer and an exporter, a seller and a buyer. And in this case, for example, the most likely an Israeli company would be the seller. They agree on the commercial terms of a contract, and they also agree, of course, on the payment terms. And to ensure kind of the payment that it's going to be made, etc., we would suggest that the payment terms include a trade finance instrument, a letter of credit or a guarantee, in order to then make the payment. With that commercial contract, the buyer would approach an issuing bank, and we have over 120 in our program in one of our countries, and ask them to issue that letter of credit or guarantee or any other payment instrument, trade finance instrument, in favor of a foreign bank. So it would be the seller's bank in most cases, which would secure the payment. The confirming bank in this case would usually say, okay, we can accept the instrument, but they may not have sufficient risk capacity to enable accepting that trade finance instrument directly. They may not have limits on a specific country or in that specific bank, or the tenor is too long or the amount is too big. And then they would need some risk mitigant. And that risk mitigant could be a guarantee from the TFP team in Ebrd. So how it would work, that on the day the issuing bank issues the trade instrument to the confirming bank, which then confirms it in favor of the seller, the exporter, the issuing bank also sends an application for Ebrd guarantee, and then we issue that covering 100% of the risk to the confirming bank, enabling him to confirm the instrument to the seller and the trade to take place. what are the actual benefits? So here we would mostly focus in this presentation on the benefits for a confirming bank and for exporters. So of course, it provides 100% guarantee of payment. It also opens the possibilities to increase or further broaden the areas of cooperation or business opportunities of a potential exporter by having this risk mitigants in place, and in order for them to do business with countries that previously may have seen too risky to some degree, because they know that there will be cover available. It also provides cost optimization, especially to the banks, confirming banks, which they would hopefully then pass on to the seller because of our AAA rating, and provide favorable credit terms, and in many cases longer tenors, especially if we're talking about investment good machinery, equipment, etc. So just overview of kind of the program and how much we have done. So we've been running since 1999. Currently, we have 120 active banks that we can support in 30 regions where EBRD is active in. We've supported since inception over 27,000 of transactions for over 22.5 now billion euros worth of trade with over 800 confirming banks. So if you look at the graph, our trade volumes have been rising every year since inception, apart from 2 dips, 2009 following the financial crisis, the global financial crisis, and in 2015, given that we stopped our operations in Russia in 2014. But since then, we've broken record after record, and we already know that in 2020, we will cross 3 billion volume of trade this year. We have also done business with Israel and supported exports from Israel, and we have 5 confirming banks in Israel that you can see on the slide, in whose favor we can issue our guarantees and then take, thereby provide a risk mitigant for any trade transaction that they confirm in favor of the seller, the exporter, and we have so far supported over 50 million worth of trade in 15 different countries of the EBRD. So how does it work in practical terms if you're interested in using the program and getting risk cover for any export that you have in one of EBRD's countries of operation? So you would first, of course, confirm that the buyer, your client, is in one of EBRD's countries of operation, and that they work with one of our issuing banks. The list of issuing banks, over 120 of them currently, and the list is updated, is available on our website. Then you also check that your house bank, let's say, is a confirming bank under the program. Then you would ensure that, of course, the goods that you are negotiating to export are not on the TFP or EBRD environmental exclusion list. Then you would determine what kind of trade instrument will be issued to secure the payment, and the best case scenario, it's already agreed upon in the trade contract. You agree on the maximum tenor you need with your client and the bank, and then check the level of fees with regards to the transaction, and then the confirming bank, so your bank will take over the negotiations with the issuing bank in one of our countries of operation, and then we will secure the transaction. And a few examples of transactions we've done and supported for Israeli exporters. So in this case, it was a Cypriot transaction. A Cypriot company was importing clothing from Israel. A Cypriot bank issued a counter guarantee for €500,000 in favor of one of our Israeli confirming banks for 1 year, and we secured 100% of the political and commercial payment risk. In this case, it was a transaction with Armenia. An Armenian company signed a contract with an Israeli manufacturer of air conditioning solutions. The Armenian bank issued a letter of credit on behalf of their client for $80,000, so a small amount, for an all-in tenor of 3 months in favor of an Israeli bank that confirmed that letter of credit to the beneficiary, to the exporter, and then the trade was kind of was possible to make happen with 100% cover of EBRD. And one more example would be here an Israeli juice, fruit juice and concentrate producer that signed a contract with a Kazakh company for the supply of fruit juice concentrate. The Kazakh bank issued a counter guarantee in the amount of 200,000 in favor of an Israeli bank, which then on the ground issued the guarantee to the exporter. Ebrd covered again 100% of this transaction, and upon the receipt of our guarantee, the Israeli bank confirmed that to the exporter, and the export took place. So this is what we do. We don't have any minimum amounts on our transactions. Our maximum transaction amount is 25 million, but no minimum amounts. And here are my contact details. So in case of any questions, feel free to get in touch, and hopefully we'll be able to support your trade as well. Thank you. And I will here pass now on to Anna Zharova. So over to you. Anna, you're on mute.
Yes. It's one of the current mistakes when you are in Zoom, to remember to unmute yourself. My name is Anna Zharova. Thank you. I want to thank you to Beverly and Anna from Ebrds, and to all the team that invite Israel-Ukraine Alliance to join this very important event. I want to share with you our presentation. Just a moment. It will take a minute to upload it. You see okay, just a moment. Okay, great. So, 2 words about Israel-Ukraine Alliance and how we started to cooperate with Ebrds. Israel-Ukraine Alliance, it's an international company that focused on enhancement of social business and investment relations between 2 countries. About 2 words about myself. I have been living in Israel for 20 years, but originally I'm from Ukraine, and maybe it can explain why I with the team choose this geographic to boost cooperation between 2 countries. So it's less important to say about, to describe our activities in social diplomacy, but business diplomacy and business partnerships, it's our main activities. We work with different, we see us as a platform, okay, that creates a business community of 2 countries, and we work with different institutions, governmental organizations, trade associations, and high-tech and corporates. In Ukraine, maybe one more word about Alliance. We have 3 different structures, okay? We have NGO in Ukraine, we have a business consulting company in Israel, and as well, we have signed the agreement with our strategic partner in Ukraine. It's a private equity fund, Quattro Group, that has a business incubator for Israeli startups in Ukraine, and provide the infrastructure for investments in real estate and support projects as private equity fund. So 2 words about cooperation with Ebrds and how we experienced it from our side. We started to participate in trade missions organized by Ebrds to Israel. It was in different fields: textile, food, IT, furniture industries. And after that, we really saw the possibility to join the project and to take part, okay, in organization buyers tour for Israeli companies to Ukraine. I will say two words immediately. So also what I want to say about cooperation with Ebrds, our organization got financial support and operational support in inviting Israeli companies and take them to Ukraine. We developed the project, the program, like the agenda of this tour together. We defined for ourselves what the results we want to get in this mission. So for us, it's really long-term partnership relations, because for now this buyers tour happened 2 years ago, but still today, okay, we take part as a media partner in different conferences. We share with love the activities that Ebrds has in Ukraine. And maybe what it's very important, it's open communication. We a small company, like to compare to Ebrds, but we know that we have a partner in every stage of the project. We really get the support. So about the project itself, just a moment. I don't know why now it doesn't work. Okay, about the case. Okay, we invited, we found and invited 15 Israeli companies. The 10 of them, 10 of these companies, owners and CEOs of these companies have never been in Ukraine before. So for them, it was the first time that they came to Ukraine, and just with the wish to explore the ecosystem and to explore how to make business with Ukrainian companies. We provided, we took part in organization B2B missions, networking event with industry leaders, personal connections. We made a lot of meetings and visited different organizations. We visit production sites, and also we took part in attended the biggest furniture and light and decor exhibition in Ukraine. As you can understand, the buyers tour was for furniture industry. I know that the topic of this meeting is agri-tech and digital development, but still I think it's really a lot of, there are different fields, as you saw. There's different fields and different opportunities. So talking about furniture industry, several numbers, there were 15 Israeli buyers during 4 days visiting Ukraine. There were about 230 meetings, 17 Ukrainian furniture companies, and 8 contracts were signed in amount of 1,190 euros. So it's not our result, okay, but it's a result of this buyers tour, this initiative that was supported by Ebrds. But it's very important to say that we were very honored to be a part of this project and to provide our expertise. And I think one of the most important things it's that being in having offices and in Israel and Ukraine with a very wide network, okay, in two countries, and speaking 2 languages and experience two mentalities. It helps us to make our work more, to provide more benefits to the company that we work with. And once again, I think Ebrds makes a very has a very important mission, okay, and helps businesses to explore and to raise. So I want to thank everyone, and I will share my contacts also in the chat. And if you have questions, I stay here to answer after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna, and over to our colleague Niv, who will now open for your questions and moderate the Q&A session.
Thank you very much indeed for it. שלום לכולם, צהריים טובים מקופנהגן, דנמרק. אני ניב לוי, אנליסט ביחידת רכש הפרויקטלי של הבנק. אני שמח מאוד להשתתף בסדנה הזאת לחשיפה של חברות ישראליות, ליוזמות עסקיות שיש לבנק בתחומים שונים. אני מלווה היום במנהל שלי ג'ק, וביחד ננסה להסיר את מסך הערפל שחלקכם יש בכל הקשור להשתתפות במכרזים שהבנק למעשה מנהל עבור קליינטים מהמגזר הציבורי, וננסה גם לתת לכם איזה שהם טיפים וכלים על מנת למקסם סיכויי זכייה והצלחה במכרזים שהבנק למעשה מייצר מדינת הקצה שלו. כמה מילים על התפקיד שלי ביחידה. התפקיד שלי בעצם מתחיל לכמה פונקציות עיקריות. הפונקציה הראשונה למעשה זה ליווי של קליינטים. אני למעשה, חלק נמצא יותר גדול, בעצם מלווה קליינטים בכל הקשור לתכנון של מכרזים, ניהול שלהם, בחינה של מועמדות שאנחנו בעצם מקבלים מכל מיני קבלנים, וגם יישום של הפרויקטים בשטח. אני גם שותף בכל מיני תהליכים של דיגיטציה שהיחידה שלי מנהלת גם באיברדי ומחוץ לו, על מנת להנגיש מידע בצורה יותר מיטבית עבור חברות במדינות שונות, וגם עבור קולגות שלנו בארגונים אחרים בעולם. ואני גם למעשה שותף בצוות שמתעסק עם דיאלוג עם מדינות הקצה שלנו, על מנת ליישם רפורמות בתחום של רכש ממשלתי. אנחנו כרגע מנהלים פרויקטים דומים כאלה במדינות כמו אלבניה וסרביה. אז לפני שאני בעצם ניגש להתחיל את ה-Q&A שלנו, אני אגיד כמה מילים על עצמי בצורה יותר פרסונלית. כמו שאמרתי, קוראים לי ניב, אני במקום מושב שתולים ליד אשדוד. יש לי תואר ראשון בלימודים גלובליים, עם התמקדות בשווקים מתעוררים באוניברסיטת ליידן בהולנד, ותואר שני בכלכלה פוליטית באוניברסיטת אמסטרדם, שגם היא בהולנד. במהלך הלימודים שלי ביליתי קצת זמן בעולם מתפתח, ביליתי סמסטר במרוקו, שם למעשה ניהלתי איזשהו מחקר אנתרופולוגי שהיה מאוד מעניין. לפני שהצטרפתי לבנק ב-2019 דרך תוכנית אנליסטים של משרד האוצר, תפקדתי בתור יועץ במכון המחקר של האוניברסיטה שלי, בפרויקטים שבעצם ניהלנו עבור קליינטים במגזר הציבורי והממשלתי במערב אירופה, ולאחר מכן עברתי לבריסל, בלגיה, באמת לעבוד בנציבות האירופית, במנהלת סחר עולמי, בכל הקשור לחקירות היטלי היצף, אנטי-דמפינג, אנטי-סרקומבנשן, ולאחר מכן למעשה הצטרפתי ל-Ebrds. אז לפני שאני אעבור ל-Q&A, אני רק אגיד שאתם יכולים לשאול את השאלות שלכם בכל נושא שאתם תרצו ב-chat section, שנוכל באמת להכווין את זה לאנשים הנכונים, ואני כרגע אעבור לאנגלית על מנת שנוכל להתחיל את זה בצורה מיטבית. Okay, so that was a Hebrew crash course to all the non-Hebrew speakers that we have in the audience today. So I think we have got a few questions about the presentations given so far. Let me just check and see what we can address first. So just to let you know, we will have another informal presentation with a Q&A session on project procurement that me and my manager Jack will organize in 20 minutes time. So I would prefer to address those questions then to make sure we have adequate amount of time for questions about ICT, trade facilitation program, and agribusiness. So I think, Anna, the first question I see here from the audience basically ask about, let's see, You know what, let's just do it differently. If you have any questions about presentations given so far, you can just maybe raise your hand and I will give you the floor to do that, as the questions being written in the chat room are not that clear to me. So
Niv, maybe if I can just take an answer to one of the questions that we hear very often, which is basically what are the terms of your loans? And we hear this very often.
Yes, exactly.
And here I just thought, before we go into individual Q&A, I maybe can just address this because that goes across all sectors. We don't have standard terms, if you will. We are basically a bank that adheres to market terms, i.e. we will not beat commercial banks on their turf. We are not supposed to be subsidized. We are not cheaper than other banks in the market. Which means for each project that we finance, we basically market test and benchmark our terms on the debt side. Where we do come out differently is, of course, that we in most of our countries can offer longer tenors. We have many countries where it's difficult for companies to get bilateral loans more than 2 or 3 years duration, and we can do 6, 7 years. So I think this is something where we are competitive. Jelena mentioned that before, we can fund across the entire balance sheet. So we can go from senior debt, subordinated debt, mezzanine, PIK, equity. So we have a structuring flexibility, which most commercial banks don't have. We can provide loans in the typical hard currencies, US dollar and euro, but also in most countries, local currency. If you think about the Ukraine, for example, where interest seems to be quite high. So I think in that regard, it is really each project, each funding proposition that we would look at in detail. So rather than being able to give you blanket terms, but I think it is tenor where we differentiate ourselves, structuring flexibility, but not necessarily cost. So that would be sort of one overall answer to this question.
And if I may just add something on a couple of questions that I saw. So one was related to Ukraine and who are the right contact persons there. I think it's the best if you can just email me with the brief description of your inquiry. What is the sector? What is the size? So that I can connect you with the right banker in Ukraine, because we have several, we have office of 60 people there and several specialists in several areas. So I want to make sure you're speaking with the right ones. And there was also a question on donor assistance. So here, I would like to actually clarify what I was discussing when I was talking about donor component in our projects. It means that when we are financing a project, sometimes there is a donor component to it. So sometimes from the donor funds, we finance particular aspects, some specialized consultancy work or some due diligence, etc. So we are not providing donations ourselves. So I hope it helps. But for those who are interested to learn more, I'm happy to put you in touch with our donor team and somebody can explain this in more detail.
Maybe you're on mute, I think.
Okay, I see we got another question now from our audience. Maybe one of our speakers can address that actually from his perspective or business process. So the question is, do you invest in social business? And could you please tell us more about inequality economic projects? Maybe one of our speakers can address those two small questions. Yeah, yes, Dirk, yeah.
Not sure I understand the question exactly. Social projects, I mean, all our project engagements, whether it is equity or debt or venture capital, need to fill basically one of our economic determinants. We have what we call transition impact. So we have various metrics that this project needs to meet, enhancing competitiveness, improving inclusion, having a energy enhancing aspect, governance improvement. So there's always, if you will, a social aspect associated with it, or a development aspect. It is not purely commercial. In that regard, this is sort of the framework within which we can engage. Having said that, even within this framework, all projects need to meet our what we call sound banking criteria, i.e. we are a profit-oriented organization at the end of the day. These projects need to be profitable. need to give us the right risk return proceeds. And in addition, of course, have these developmental aspects that the bank puts forward. Integrity is one of the most important points. This is why this bank can act very well as a catalyst for further foreign investors in our countries. We have a deep process of scrutiny over the ultimate beneficial owners and the whole governance structure around our companies, whether they are investee companies or borrowers. So these are EBRD specific parameters that come on top of if you will, the pure commercial aspects. But at the end of the day, a project will have to be deemed commercial for us to engage as well.
Yes. A few more questions that were raised about participation in EBRD tenders. And one of them was who can actually participate and apply for tenders. So essentially, our project procurement tenders are not restricted to certain countries. Any company from the entire world can apply and participate, as long as they can, of course, provide the adequate set of documents that the client asks throughout the tender process. And we have our e-procurement system that we currently manage the majority of our tenders, which is called ESAP, through which you can actually get access to those opportunities and apply for certain tenders. In that system, you can, of course, upload the documentation, get clarification requests from the client, and basically have an engagement with us and the client throughout the entire tender process until contract signing. I will share a link to that system in the chat section so you can access it in your free time, register, and basically be exposed to all the tender opportunities that we at the EBRD basically manage with our clients in our operation countries. And you might have on the issues that have been raised so far today.
I think we have Elias Bita raising his hand. He would like to ask a question.
Of course, over to you. Yeah.
Hi, Anna. I think you already addressed my my question, so I will leave it for other people to participate. Thanks.
Great. Thanks.
Is Jack here as well, my manager? Jack, are you here?
I'm here. I just
hi, Jack.
The meeting. Sorry for being late. Oh, no, actually I am on time.
Good.
It seems like you are ahead of schedule.
Yes, exactly. Maybe you would like to say a few words about Israeli companies being able to compete in our tenders and perhaps even maximize their chances to succeed in them from your experience.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Of course. I just came in when we were talking about our selections system, our electronic platform, which we called ESEP, but it's only one really of the two main, let's say, venues that you have in a bank, because the e-tendering platform ESEP is the system that is used when clients of the bank are contracting your services, whether it's for goods, works, or consultancy services. Everything which is for the purpose of the project and which is contracted for by the client, that goes through the ESEP system. But you also have another opportunity, in particular if you are, let's say, running a consultancy company, and that is to provide services to the bank directly. So it means that you will apply, let's say, for a contract which is being selected by bank staff and being contracted by one of our banking teams. So, and just to mention on the consultancy side that the vast number of consultancy contracts are actually contracted for by the bank. And it is roughly in the region about 3,500 to 4,000 contracts a year. On the client side, it is far less, but normally those contracts tends to be a little bit larger because those contracts are related to project implementation, and they are, let's say, very often things like project implementation support, supervisory service under rather large construction contracts, which we are providing financing to. So they tend to be on the larger side, but they are not as many. So on that side, we talk about roughly about 200 contracts a year. Yeah? And that is probably should be put in sort of the context also of how many contracts overall that are placed by our clients. And I think it's very important to, I'm sure it's been pointed out before here during this meeting, that we are a project financing bank. And if you compare us with, let's say, the likes of the World Bank, which we know that they are financing hundreds of thousands of contracts which are placed by their clients. In our case, we are obviously much smaller, but nevertheless very interesting from a both consultancy and construction and goods point of view, because the contracts that we are financing are fairly large. But the majority of the contracts that we are financing are actually works contracts. And overall, if you look at the statistics, we roughly support our clients with financing of in the region of 300 to 350 goods and works contracts during a year. And then you add another, let's say, up to 200 maybe consultancy contracts. And the value of the goods and works, it's roughly about 2.5 billion a year. So if you make a simple divider there, you realize that these contracts are normally quite substantial. Yeah. So there is definitely excellent opportunities to participate in any one of these contracts. And the good thing with being a smaller bank, which is also a project financing bank, is that we know from the outset of the project exactly which contracts we are destined to provide financing for. That means that we can also do very good forecasting. And this forecasting we try to share with you who represent the market to make sure that you have an opportunity to prepare yourself and be able to participate in these tenders. Sorry? Someone wanted to come in?
I think it's okay. I can move on, Jack.
Okay, okay. So if you go into our website and look at the project procurement, you will find that there is a project pipeline. And there you can look at all the contracts that we expect to finance in different countries under certain projects, etc., and which year, and roughly the magnitude of the size of those contracts. You know? So it's a good instrument for you to prepare yourself for the future. So I really recommend to go in and have a look at that one. We have currently in that pipeline, or at least last I looked, we had contracts for roughly about 14 billion in that pipeline. And that represents about 1,000 contracts. So should be very interesting for you. And for sure, as Neil was saying, let's say contractors, suppliers, consultants from all countries over the world are eligible to participate in those tenders, with the exception of those which are debarred by the bank for having been subject, or let's say subjected themselves to fraud and corruption, or been subject to UN Chapter 7, which I don't expect any one of you will be. Yeah? So you're all eligible.
Thank you very much, Jack, for this input, and I'm sure we will hear more information in our informal Q&A session, which will follow after this one. Moving from procurement to agribusiness, because I think we have a question to Yelena. Someone in the audience basically asked, is there any newsletter in agriculture tender topics to stay notified?
Well, not that I'm aware of. I will certainly check if there is something to be shared with the wider audience.
Okay. Just to remind everyone that I've shared a few links in the chat section. One link is for our client e-procurement system, ESAP, that Jack just mentioned. Another one is to our project procurement section on Ebrds website, where you can get more information about our procedures, standard tender documents, and other valuable information that will be useful as you prepare your proposals to tender in the future. Yeah, so just so you're aware of, basically. Any other question you might have on the issues we discussed today? Maybe a member of our trade facilitation program can advise Israeli companies how they can basically maximize their chances to participate in TFP-related projects, and by that create a marketplace for other Israeli companies to be involved in the future, basically.
Sure, thanks, Nev. I mean, basically, it does start with you discussing any possibilities with your clients, potential buyers of your goods, structuring the contracts, and then approaching your bank. So there is a list of Israeli confirming banks in the presentation I showed. It's also available on the website, and I just shared the link to it in the chat. And then going from there, of course, in general, finding opportunities abroad would not be, let's say, in the scope of our program. We step in when you already have a trade transaction and need our cover for it. And that could come, it's a bank-to-bank program. So it could come, the request can come from your bank or of course from the buyer's bank to us, but it's good to know that you have that tool available. If you're looking at markets which are new to you and you are not sure of them and how to conduct a trade with them, just know that for, let's say, 30 of these countries, you can be you can receive cover, or your bank can receive cover in order for your trade to actually take place. And likewise with the other products that Ebrd provides, it's also about providing longer tenors than a commercial bank would be able to do without our guarantee, or bigger amounts, etc. So this is kind of, those would be the benefits really, is for you to being able to conduct business in economies where you were not ready to take on the risk. Potentially, you know, if you're working on open account, advance payment, you would know how the transaction would actually be secured. You would know that here, okay, if we go into these markets, there's a tool available and we can be paid, and our bank can receive that cover in order to pay us.
That's very clear, Anna. Thank you very much for this information. I encourage more participants to post their question in the chat booth, as we're having this opportunity that you can actually acquire information, increase your chances to be involved in the business of the bank, and by that also potentially create joint ventures and tender for much bigger contracts or opportunities. So please do use this opportunity to ask questions. I encourage all of you. Okay, Jack, one for you now. In the domain of procurement, how does one become consultant for the bank?
Yes, basically two ways. One, which is the let's say the opportunities which we advertise for on our website. We are like any bank, very transparent in that respect. All opportunities are, or let's say, I would say almost all opportunities are on the website. And those who are not on the website are normally the small consultancy assignments, those which are maybe under 75,000 euro. There, the bank, as well as clients, have an opportunity to do direct selection. And in order to, let's say, get the opportunity to be directly selected, you obviously need to have contact, you need to be known, yeah? And whilst I know it's not overly popular amongst our friends in banking to get inundated with the contacts from the consultancy industry, there are obviously opportunities to make yourself known anyway through conferences and webinars, and if you have, let's say, look at our website and look at the project pipeline, you can make yourself, let's say, known to our clients. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being in contact with our clients. I would say, on the contrary, this is something that you need to do. You need to prepare yourself. You need to make yourself known to clients, you know, in order to participate in any tender, large or small. You know? But this openness in terms of tendering applies until the tender opportunity is advertised on our website. Then after that, we do not want to see any underhand contacts with our clients. Then you need to go through the formal route as presented in the tender document. So, but there are no magic bullets in this, unfortunately. You need to be sort of known.
Yes, indeed, Jack. And one more question that was raised again regarding a procurement issue. And I was just wondering, Jack, if you could spare us a few moments or minutes to discuss the debriefing mechanism. So how basically participant can get feedback if the proposal has failed. How does the process go, and what does debriefing actually mean in that context?
Sorry, that was to me, yeah? Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Debriefing, let's say in the context of client contracting, is being carried out by the clients. So it's not being carried out by the bank. But the clients have an obligation to provide debriefing. And the first debriefing is actually the response that you get when you have provided a tender or a proposal. You know? Then if you have not been selected, you are obliged to receive the information on why you were not selected. But don't do the mistake as some do and expect that you can see the competitors' proposals, because that is confidential information. It's about your submission. So how have your submission been evaluated? That's what you can ask for, and you should ask for that, unless you get already in the first round you get enough information. Don't hesitate to ask. It's a learning curve, and you need to get the right information to be able to prepare for next time. You know. Now, if you should for some reason be extremely unhappy about the information that you have been provided with, and you think that this is wrong, then you do have an opportunity to provide a complaint to the bank. And then we, as a procurement department, we will do a review of that complaint. And once we have done an in-depth review and gathered all the information that we need to provide a recommendation, we will bring this recommendation to an internal committee, which is called the Procurement Complaints Committee. And the idea with setting up or having a committee for this is that we try to emulate what happens in a national system, where you have an independent party to go to for your complaint, such as let's say a complaint mechanism in the country or a court of law. So that's really basically how it works.
Absolutely, Jack, thank you for your answer. A rather general question that has just been raised that maybe our other speakers can address. Someone in the audience asks how he or she will be able to apply for equity and debt financing, and how, in what way. So maybe one of our other speakers can address this issue, please.
Maybe I can take these general ones. So it depends on what the project is in. So as I said, you can always initially get in touch with me with the brief description of your project, the size and sector, country, and then I can put you in touch with the relevant banker. And since I'm here, there is also a question from a company from India, and they have a company in Poland, and asking whether they can get financial assistance from Ebrd if they have a project in Poland or Israel or Ukraine. If you are investing in Poland or in Ukraine, yes, indeed. So do get in touch with us. And I think we have also, Niva, a question for Jelena from a food tech company. So maybe since I'm speaking, I can quickly read it. So Jelena, the company is saying they are the world's first commercial grasshopper protein producer, and they developed a project in Jordan with potential customers in GCC as well as food producers in Europe, and asking if they are able to apply for equity and debt financing and how. So maybe you can just introduce briefly.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, please send us your proposal. I will drop my email address in a group chat. So, and then we can see, then we can evaluate the opportunity and see whether we can provide any financing.
Right, I think our formal Q&A session is just over according to our schedule. I would like to thank all of you for your participation and active questions, and I hope that this session has been really helpful for you. Just as a reminder, we will have a separate informal Q&A session with Jack, where we will be able to focus more on procurement-related questions and issues that you would like to address with us, which will hopefully be useful as you prepare potential proposals or basically tender to projects that the EBRD basically finances in our operation countries. So I would like to give the floor back to Anna to say a few concluding remarks about the workshop that we just had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niv. So from our end, really immense gratitude to our Israeli partners and to all of the participants who dedicated your time to listening to our presentations today. I would also like to thank all of my colleagues for their excellent presentations. And just briefly and finally, do get in touch with us. We are very flexible and there is plenty that we can do for you. And we hope for this to be a beginning of plenty successful Israeli-EBRD cooperations. So I'll stop here and say goodbye to you all, and then hand over to my colleagues from procurement for a specialized procurement session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
So if my prediction is right, we should now witness a huge drop in numbers of participants. But if not, it's also good. Okay, perfect. I think it will be useful to adopt the same methodology for questions and answers, and just encourage you again to put your questions in the chat section so I can address them to Jack, and Jack basically can answer and provide me with more useful information about EBRD tenders. So please do use this opportunity to ask more questions and get information. It's usually not that clearly explained in different mediums that you might encounter previously. Jack, maybe as a way to encourage our participants to ask questions, you can say a few words about yourself and your history at the bank. That would be very useful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, okay. I can start by saying my name is Jan Jakot. My friends call me Jack, so please call me Jack. I've had the great opportunity not long time ago actually to be in Israel and having an outreach there, which was fantastic participation, very interesting discussion. So very good memories. Yeah, and I hope, as we all do, that this pandemic soon will be over, so we can start to meet up face to face again. It will be certainly much more fun than seeing each other on the screen, even that is a nice substitute, but it's never as good as meeting face to face. Yeah. So I'm Swedish. I've been with the bank for 22 years, hence my gray hair. And I've been working with international public procurement in development context for over 30 years. I lived and worked in Eastern Europe, implemented predominantly World Bank development projects. And then I went to Africa, worked in Africa for a couple of years. And I was in Vietnam working there in the health sector with the public procurement. And then I came to EBRD and thought I would stay there for a couple of years. And now 22 years later, I'm still there. Yeah. So it shows, at least to me, that the EBRD provided a very interesting place, both to work in and to work with. You know. And I like the very much of the sort of the approach that the bank has in comparison with what I've sort of experienced maybe with other development banks. And I think to put that in one very blunt word, I think it is the commercial drive that EBRD stands for, which to me is an interesting sort of ground concept, which also reflects in both policies and culture within the bank, you know. So that's a little bit about myself. And just to very quickly explain a little bit about our organization, I mentioned before that my role and NIV's role is that we work with everything which is, let's say, related to our projects in such a way that all the contracts that we work with are the ones which are selected by the clients and contracted by the clients. Whether the financing is coming from the bank or from grant funds, that's a secondary point for us. The point is that we are supporting our clients with the procurement process, the contracting, and the implementation of the projects. And we are, given the fact that we are a fairly small bank, we have the opportunity to have a very hands-on approach on all the procurement and predominantly implementation also. So each and every contract which is procured and contracted for by the clients have a very stringent oversight of the whole process from our team. You know? The team is divided in two parts. One is what we call the policy department or team. The policy department works predominantly with making sure that we do have the best and best policy that one could wish for, following the best, let's say, international practice, but also aligned with our fellow banks like World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, African Development Bank, etc. We have a very close cooperation with all the other banks. But we also work with other things such as policy dialogue with our countries of operation, where we work also in joint ventures. We work closely together with UNCITRAL, the legal arm of the UN. And when we support our countries to develop their procurement framework, we actually do that on the basis of the UNCITRAL model law on procurement. And that is very important because the model law, it has a very broad backing from the OECD countries, but from the UN countries, but it also means that if you align your national framework to the model law, that means that you're also aligning yourself to the World Trade Organization's government procurement agreement. And we are actually the only bank which has in the agreement established in the bank a clear direction for which procurement policy we should have. And that is that our procurement policy and all the activities that we do in the realm of our procurement activities must be aligned with the government procurement agreement. So that's why we work in that direction. We also work with capacity development, but any bank, even if we combined all our resources, we wouldn't have enough resources to do all the capacity development that would be needed in the world. So our way of doing that is that we have set up 2 master classes in international public procurement management. We have one master class which is taking place in Tor Vergata University in Rome, and we have an executive master class which goes on in Belgrade. And the whole idea with this is that we offer this opportunity to already established procurement professionals in our countries of operation, which then takes a full academic master in public procurement management, and then goes back to the place where they were working before. And we obviously hope that they will inject all this newfound knowledge straight into the work stream in the countries where they are coming from. But also very important is that it's combined with a very strong alumni. And the alumni is very important for us because it means that since we have got to know these people during the cycle of the master, we also have very good contacts with procurement professionals in our countries of operations, which we then can cooperate with on policy dialogue, you know. We also work a lot in the field of anti-corruption, where we work, let's say, a lot with the OECD, the anti-corruption network. So we work with, as a part of the expert group in OECD, working directly with countries on anti-corruption measures. So, so that's a bit of what we do in the policy department. And then we have which is the larger group of procurement policy and advisory department. That's the implementation support. And these are procurement professionals, all of them which have been working in the field in the past with implementing development projects and let's say works contracts, goods contracts, etc. You know. And then they come to the bank, and their sole task is to ensure that they provide the best advice to bankers in setting up the projects, but also working with our clients throughout the project implementation. And as I said before, each and every contract that we are providing financing to has a direct oversight by a procurement specialist in our implementation team. You know. So that's a little bit in sort of in the large picture of how we operate. Don't know, Niv, if there's any question which has been raised during when I've been talking?
Not yet. First of all, thank you, Jack, for this explanation. It's always good to be reminded of the multi-dimensional orientation of our department. But again, I encourage you all to participate and ask more questions as you got the director of the procurement division of the Ebrd now explaining you about the procedures. But maybe, Jack, I can ask you a question which interests me personally. So given the clear implications of COVID-19 on contract planning, implementation, and management, what sort of the key consideration you think Israeli companies should take while they actually prepare proposals to tender for Ebrd project, essentially, in countries which they've never worked before?
Very good question. We do have, just to start with, we do have a guidance. So again, if you go into the ebrd.com and you go into work with us and project procurement, or actually you go into procurement there, then you come to our first, let's say, website, which has a guide attached to it on the kind of considerations that you should take, whether you're a consultant, a tender, contractor in an Ebrd finance project. And I would say, you know, it's obviously impossible to give one answer fits all countries in this respect, you know, because at the end of the day, you come from one country with one set of regulation in terms of COVID, and you go to another country with another set of COVID regulations. And the only overall answer, and let's say that I can provide right here and now, is that you will need to adhere to both. You know? That is very clear. And to some countries, I would say it's probably not even feasible at the moment to travel to. But interesting for us, to my mind, has been that we actually can see that in our projects where we thought when we went into this pandemic that we were going to see absolute disasters all over due to COVID, predominantly the contracts which are already placed, there are very few which have full terminations, you know. So most of the contracts have actually continued. That's from an implementation point of view in terms of works contracts, you know, and that is a little bit surprising to us, but it's obviously on the positive side that we actually have seen less of the big disasters, you know. And the difficult part has been obviously on the consultancy side, where consultants are traveling from another country to be, let's say, in a supervisory role. But in most cases, that has been resolved through to the fact that we also have both joint ventures with local, where we see local consultants working together with international consultants for supervisory projects, etc. So they have been able to maintain a good supervisory function anyway, as well as, let's say, PIU support and project implementation support. So it is still possible. And I think also to flag a little bit, the fact that we have an electronic platform for procurement has helped immensely in order to ensure that procurement processes can continue in an orderly fashion during the pandemic. The need for, let's say, direct physical contact in the electronic, let's say, platform is substantially less than when delivering, let's say, your proposals by hand or courier, etc., all over the world. You know? So it has helped a lot. You know?
Absolutely, Jack. We have fairly 9 more minutes for this informal Q&A and 2 more questions to address. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. We have one question here. Is there an address in the procurement team to contact for assistance while preparing the proposal?
Yeah.
Let's say like this, that we are very careful with our contacts with the consultants and tenders when they are preparing the tender, because obviously as a bank we cannot be seen whether it is the fact or not, but we cannot have the optical illusion that we are actually supporting one consultant over another or one tender over another. So during the tender proposal phase, we will simply not entertain any discussion at all. We just don't do it, and you have to respect our reasons for that. If you are not participating and you just want to have a general discussion, you are very welcome to do that. We are very happy to have a discussion, no problem at all. And our contact details are again on the website. You can send us an email and we will be in contact. You know, so we welcome any dialogue with you. So that is not a problem, as long as you are not in the tendering stage.
Check one more question on a similar issue. A member of an Israeli company asks, we are running training center for transport infrastructure specialists. Do you procure training directly or it's including in the scope of projects?
We don't procure training directly, let's say, for clients, but very often you do see with, let's say, especially with larger works and construction formal contract, you see training as part of the parcel which is being procured. And as I answered someone else here, that you know, one thing, if you have these kind of services, the best thing in my mind is that you look at who are actually participating in the tenders for this type of let's say, construction infrastructure projects that you're interested in, and you contact them. You can also buy the tender document to see if it is included as part of or actually you don't need to buy the documents anymore. You get them for free as long as you sign up for the e-tendering services. So we don't do it as a separate contract. You know, it will be part of a bigger parcel.
Absolutely. Jack, as you can see, there is one more question from Eyal. Is there an address in the procurement team to contact for assistance while preparing proposals?
He was answering that.
Okay. Sorry.
But there's one from Noah, I see.
Let's scroll up and see what Noah asked. This function is a bit stuck for me. Let's see.
I would love to hear how the code changed the perception and the strategy of the bank. Yeah. I mean, I think I've already mentioned sort of in the tendering concept, you know, but obviously, like any other bank, we are all sitting at home working, which has many challenges. And I think if you look at, let's say, the bank's performance during this time, we have done very well. We have supported a lot of, let's say, current clients, but we have also, let's say, supported a lot of new projects during this time. The portfolio remains very much the same, but there are a few new products which we haven't seen previously in the portfolio. But we have to stick within what is the objectives of the bank, what are the cornerstones of any investment for the bank, obviously. So these new products will have to fit into that mold, you know. But strategy, I'm not the strategist of the bank, so I can't tell you what the strategy for the, let's say, for the foreseeable future is because of COVID. But obviously we are hoping to be able to open up our regional offices as soon as possible, because they are extremely important for what we are doing. The close contact with our clients is key to success. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. Maybe one last question to conclude this session as we are approaching 3:45 Denmark time. Jack, if you were asked to give an Israeli company an advice on how to design a winning proposals, what will your advice be, essentially?
My simple advice is that only, let's say, answer the question as they are put. And my point here is that many companies that are, you know, in the forefront of development within their special technical area, or they are in the forefront of their expertise, have a tendency of over-engineering their proposals. And the problem with that is that you will obviously have to be rewarded for that over-engineering, which means that it is likely that your proposal will be a little bit too expensive to be considered as a, let's say, front runner. And one thing which is very important, and that is that in the consultancy selection, there is a certain subjectivity in the evaluation methodology, because it's based on merit point systems. But in all our works contracts and all our goods contracts, we do not accept any form of subjective type of criteria. It has to be based on responding exactly to what has been asked and putting a price on it. So in a works contract, we do not use what in the EU world is called the meet approach, where you have a certain point system for how you respond, where you also in that point system can take into account innovations, different proposals, etc. You know, in our world, we do it a little bit more stringent and strict. And there is a very good reason for that, because you also have to remember that those countries where you are expecting to work in, unfortunately, belongs to the most corrupt countries in the world. And we need to ensure as much as possible that our processes takes out the factor of corruption as much as possible. And that's why we are providing a very stringent process with a very stringent oversight. And that is very important to remember. So I would say, read the expectations in the tender documents and answer them to the best of your ability, but don't go beyond that. There is no point with that. Bring the best proposal. Now, that is for a single stage process. If you have a two-stage process, that means that, or a multi-stage process, where you are actually encouraged to come in with technical proposal before you have a financial offer on the table, then you can engage in more dialogue, and you can engage in providing more innovative proposals. But that is for the multi-stage process. And it's very important to make a very clear distinction on that. And the clear distinction is the moment you have money on the table, meaning the money which is in your proposal, there is no room for discussion. You either meet the requirements or you don't. But if you don't have money on the table, then you can discuss.
Very clear, Jack. Indeed, the devil is in the details. Any other question before we close the floor for questions this time? If not, I hope this informal session has been very useful for you, and it will actually encourage you to prepare more proposals and participate in the tenders that we finance in operation countries. I've already shared a number of links that you can follow and get access to different documents, information, and links to our e-procurement system, with which you can actually submit your proposals, and also my contact details in case you have any questions about the bank and how to do business with us. So I would like to thank again the 48 brave participants who have dedicated their time and ask questions. And I would like to wish you a pleasant day and happy Hanukkah. And I hope to see you again in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.